can take away everything that I ever worked for. I'ma keep on pushing till I earn more. I won't ever fall. Won't never, won't never, won't never, won't never, won't never, won't never. Call it quits, call it quits.
All right, here we are today with Mike Carey. Mike is running for Congress. If I can say anything about Mike, it's a couple of really funny things. First one is he is not your typical politician. He's a gentleman who spent most of his time working in business and on business, and so he understands the business concepts and how the money flows in the economy of business, number one. Number two, he's a normal guy. He's married, he has kids. He is someone that you could talk to. And number three, I think the most important thing, they tell you this, once you're a hockey dad, you're always a hockey dad.
Amen.
Mike and I met
That's
through
right.
hockey. Our boys play hockey together, and I got to know him pretty well. And to tell you that I am proud to be his friend, I truly am. And I think Mike's got a vision for our district and everything that it has to, anything has to happen to our district to get our people to a position where we're all prospering and living a happy life. So there's Mike Carey, and there's a gentleman here with us. I'll let you introduce yourself.
My name is Alex. I'm a part of the Ukrainian community, Ukrainian-American community over here in West Columbus. Proud to be an American for almost 20 years now.
I also hear you are a secretary for a very large Ukrainian church.
That's correct, yes, sir.
Okay, so you represent a lot of voices.
I can't say I represent, but I heard those voices and I know what they're thinking because I'm kind of part of the community.
About over 1,000 members in the church. Right.
Almost 900 people.
Sure.
But we are practicing like fixed membership, so overall we have like 1,300 people attending church like on the regular basis.
So a lot of voices.
A lot of voices.
So
yes,
here we
sir.
are today to talk to Mike about his views on Ukraine and politics in general. I'm going to turn this over to this guy here, who probably has a load of questions for Mike, and we'll go from there.
Thanks, Vadim.
Hey, Mike, thanks for being here.
Oh, it's great to be here.
I know you have a very busy schedule, so thanks for taking time out
Oh,
to
absolutely.
come here and talk to us. Just want to get started. What made you get into politics? If you could just talk about your background a bit.
Yeah, sure. I started when I was really young. I had always thought that I wanted to serve an elected office. It was just a dream. And then started working at the State House when I was in college, and then ultimately got to go to Washington. I worked on the Hill for about 3 years, from about 95 to 98, and that was when the first contract with America was put together through Newt Gingrich. But then after that, I pretty much got out and went into private industry, represented all of the coal companies in the state of Ohio. And back in the 90s, that was when we had almost 4,000 people that were employed in those coal mines. And I watched systematically how government regulation closed so many of those small mom and pop shops because they were very small and consolidated into larger companies. Then I went in-house to the nation's largest independent coal company. And so we had operations in about 9 different states. And so I ran all of the government affairs for that company. So my office was in D.C., and I lived here in Central Ohio, but then I would make the commute usually every week. So we had an opportunity when Congressman Steve Stivers, who had been, I served in the National Guard with for many, many years, but I've known him for 30 years. He decided that he wanted to step down and take on a position at the chamber. And I have a core group of people, good friends, and they were like, I turned 50 years old that year. So a lot of people, when they turn 50, they buy a red sports car or something like that. I made the decision that I was going to run for Congress. And so we had to put together a campaign very quickly. I ran against a lot of people that had been on the ballot for many, many years. We had 2 state senators, 2 state reps, people that had long records.
Career politicians.
Career politicians. And, honestly, as somebody that has worked with both sides, and I did. I worked with Democrats and I worked with Republicans. I was always a registered Republican, but always worked with both sides because anybody that was for coal or domestic energy, I supported them. And so, but what I saw, and I think a lot of people get into politics for the right reasons, but, they stay in politics too long. I just saw that so many of the politicians had let me down. And so I decided at that moment that that's why I wanted to run. And so we put together a great campaign, and we won, had 11 challengers, and we won. And then we had a general, and we won that. And then we had this new thing called redistricting, which we have to do every decade here. So I go from a district that I just won literally a few months back, November 21st or November of 2021. So I'm now running in a new district. I'm a member of Congress that is 70% new voters. So I literally go from a district that was one county away from the state of West Virginia to one county away from the state of Indiana. So that just tells you the massive change the district had. Now, the core base, of course, is still in Columbus, where I live, and of course we have all the west side. So it's a pretty big district. So we're getting around. That's what we did today. I've been in hog barns and cattle barns and playing the piano in Troy, Ohio, on the street, and I'm not that good, but they did want me to play. So
Quick question
Yeah.
related to that. The common like perception about politics being like a dirty business and stuff like
Yeah.
that, and whoever goes in there like got under like all kinds of agendas and stuff like that. They're just running, they're campaigning on something good, promising something good, but when they get to Washington and all that, they got like infected or whatever. Do you think you have the antidote for that? Like, are you immune to that, or
You know,
you have any like system of values that you're sticking to?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you find is that there are a lot of people that go to D.C. and they have agendas, and I just want to make government work. You know, I come from the business background. I've watched and I worked for an industry, again, that literally before Obama took office, okay, the coal industry in the United States was producing about 1.2 billion tons of domestic coal. Last year, I think we were in the neighborhood of 600 million tons of coal. Now, you look at an industry that has been, halved. And that's not just, I mean, look, we can talk about the environmental side of things. We talk about the economic side, but just think about the people that were laid off because they were indiscriminately put into a category that they said, we don't want coal. And all those coal miners, I mean, people that I've worked with for years. And I just think that, you know, I've seen the federal government do over the course of my life is pick winners and losers. And I don't think that should be the role of government. I really don't. So, yeah, so if there's one thing I'm going to be true, it's going to make sure the business can prosper because that's what grows the economy.
So you believe in small government then, right? You want what do you believe the main function of government should be?
Well,
in our
I mean,
lives?
there's obviously we have our Constitution, right? But I think what we have to do as elected leaders is make sure that when we look at a bill, we have to see what does that really do for the country. And so often I think, you know, and I'm brand new to this, right? You know, I always watched issues that had to do with natural resources and energy and labor relations. But there are so many different issues now. You know, we've got this bill that we're working right now that I think it really affects all the people that will probably be watching this, the CHIPS Act. You know, this is something that would bring, help to bring Intel into Central Ohio, tremendous amount of jobs. But what we have in Congress right now, and you guys may have not seen this, but when I was a kid, we used to watch this thing called Schoolhouse Rock. And it was a thing called, I'm just a bill, I'm only a bill, I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill, right? I don't think that Nancy Pelosi or any of the members of her leadership team ever saw that because they just don't do what you should be doing with the bill process. So we have a CHIPS Act. It is bipartisan bill that everybody agrees that we need because, unfortunately, China has taken over that market. And at one time, we had 40% of the chips coming out of the United States back in the 1990s. Today, we're down to about 12%. Now, what happens, and a lot of that is in Taiwan. So what happens if something happens in Taiwan and we lose all that capacity? We see now cars that can't get chips. So, you know, my goal, I think, looking at the CHIPS Act, and the reason I say this is a bipartisan bill that was a very good bill, wound up getting lit up like a Christmas tree with special projects because that's what Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats want to do. They don't go through the regular process. So now that bill's stuck over in the Senate, and we need that because Central Ohio needs it. And that's just one example of something that I think government could do. But we as conservatives, as Republicans, we want to make sure we go through regular order so bills such as the CHIPS Act don't get, you know, held hostage, you know, for progressive ideas.
Speaking of that, wanted to talk about another topic that we're near and dear to our hearts as Ukrainian Americans. What is your view on Ukraine and what's going on there?
Well, I serve with a member who's from Ukraine, and she actually addressed us in conference right before it happened. Andy Fute, who is a very good friend of mine, who is very involved in Ukrainian issues, I reached out to him as soon as, listen, I'm a military guy. I spent 10 years in the military. Anytime you start building up forces on a border, I don't care whether it's with Ukraine, whether it's, any other country, what's going to happen. Right? I mean, it's inevitable.
Even if it was like claimed to be a training
Exercise. I mean, come on. I mean, anybody that
you don't pull 100,000 troops on the border for training.
You don't put and it's not just the troops. When you're putting the infrastructure, because I was a ordnance officer, which meant I dealt with maintenance. So that is, if a piece of equipment were to break down, it would come back to my depot, and then we would rebuild it, a track, a turret, whatever it may be, engines. So when they were building up that infrastructure, it's one thing to bring troops, but to build up the infrastructure, hospitals, maintenance facilities, you knew that this was going to happen. And I think, unfortunately, what this administration did was they should have enacted all of these sanctions long before they did. I don't know whether that would have done anything to curtail Putin. I'm not sure. But, I think we've had a very good relationship. And that's, part of the thing that I would like to see is, I think Zelensky has been very clear. He doesn't want American soldiers. He just needs American bullets. And I think that's hopefully what we are providing. I know I had to take that vote. There was, a lot of people were concerned about that vote. But it was something that we had to do in order to get the supplies that were needed. So very concerned about what's happening there, for sure. And really concerned about what happens in the Ukraine will be indicative of what happens in the rest of Europe. Mm-hmm. Who's next? If Putin is allowed to succeed in the Ukraine, is Poland next? Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia? I mean, who's next? Because I think Putin's view is not bringing in my opinion, just who I've talked to, it's not making it the Soviet Union. He wants the Russian Empire, and that's what's scary. And so where does he stop? And I think we got to make sure he stops in the Ukraine.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you know about this or not. I have some friends and relatives that I've been talking to that are on the eastern side of Ukraine, and they're saying that the real reason he invaded Ukraine was because Ukrainians found a lot of natural gas resources on the eastern side of Ukraine, and if that's true, that'll threaten Putin's power in the world, because his main power is his gas, natural gas.
That's right.
So he invaded Ukraine, and he doesn't care who gets killed, how many people get killed, because if the land's barren, he can access the its oil reserves.
Well, I mean, you're blessed with. Ukraine's blessed with rich oil and gas reserves. Are rich with coal, agriculture. I mean, it's obviously those were things that he was thinking. I mean, you look at what is happening right now in Europe. This rush to the new Green Deal and energy, okay, is causing issues in Europe that we've never seen with the price of energy. Yeah. And they become so reliant on Russia for natural gas. I mean, I was just in a meeting with several Italian, which I happen to be part Italian, so with Italian, I'm on the Italian-American caucus, with some of the Italian members of their Senate, and just listening about how long it would take them to get off of Russian natural gas. And they're telling us 2 years, because they can't find it anywhere. In the same period, this administration in America is
sending
stopping
gas to China.
Yeah, sending not only to China, but stopping domestic exploration of our natural resources. Yeah. We could fill that backlog that's in Europe. What you're seeing, and I, in my career, I obviously did a lot of coal. We sold coal worldwide, and so I have a lot of friends that are still in that business. And what they've told me, like in America, we've gone into this ESG stuff. We want all of our companies to be ESG compliant, and there's a thing going on in Europe that they want to divest themselves of everything Russian. And so what we as Americans need to do is do a better job of filling that void. And we could do that. We could send compressed natural gas, liquid natural gas, coal, but we got to be able to develop that here. And this administration just doesn't want to do that. They want to focus on the new Green Deal. And what you're seeing in Germany right now, even the people that are part of their Green Party are now really concerned that they're not going to have enough energy. And so they're looking at possibly, what kind of nuke plant could they build? Could they build some coal plants? And you're seeing that all over Europe. So, again, I'm not sure, but he is definitely, that has been his power grab. And, and his relationship with China, scary, because China is really doesn't have America's best interests at heart for sure. So, and literally, I'm sure they don't have the Ukraine's.
Yeah. One reason why my parents and a lot of Ukrainians came here was because there was large corruption in Ukraine and almost no opportunity to get ahead honestly and fair. And I think we're starting to see a bit of corruption here in America as well. But my question to you is, knowing how much we know, and probably you know as well, about how much corruption there is in Ukraine, how much of the $40 billion dollars that went to Ukraine in that bill actually do you think made it to the front lines and actually made it to help Ukraine against Russia?
I tell you, that's a question that's asked quite a bit. And unfortunately, right now, the Republicans don't have control of Congress. And I can assure you that while we may not know the answers right now, that will be one of the oversight questions once we get power. And we will. The Republicans will take over in January. There's no doubt in my mind. I mean, Joe Biden is a disaster. I mean, he's the albatross holding every
obvious.
Democratic. I mean, it's just so what Kevin McCarthy, the leader of the Republican Party in the House, is committed to is having oversight on all of these spending packages. So while we may not know the answers now, I can assure you by the first of the year that will be part of the oversight hearings that we'll have. And I don't know what committee that would go through. Right now I sit on the Budget Committee. I sit on the Science, Space, and Technology Committee. My hope, if I do things right, is I can get on Ways and Means, and that's something that may fall in the Ways and Means Committee.
Yeah.
Because obvious thing was when that bill was passed about the aid to Ukraine, that they didn't want any oversight on that included. So that's
sure.
how they kind of agreed to pass it, without oversight, without any check.
Absolutely, and I think that's where when I talk about how Nancy has run the House, Nancy Pelosi, Speaker, they just don't care. They have, and this is something. It's not just indicative of that spending package. Build Back Better was another one. But I will tell you, this is. I can't believe that they do this. As somebody that's been in the private business world for the last 25 years, we will get bills that will have $1.7 trillion worth of spending in them that are over, 2,000 pages long. We'll get these at 10 o'clock at night, and we're asked to vote on them
In the morning?
In the morning. Now, I'm sorry.
That's wrong.
I'm not going to vote on something like that. At least with the Ukraine package, there was enough debate on it. It's certainly not the oversight that the Republicans want, because no Republican in Congress wants to just blindly throw money down a hole.
Yeah.
I mean, we all believe in getting to a balanced budget in this country. When I worked on the Hill, it was the first time we had a balanced budget. It was the 1990s. But, a lot of Republicans lost their way. And, everybody likes their own projects and this and that, and this and that. And so we started running deficits again. So, again, the oversight is what Kevin is committed to. And I think that you'll definitely see a lot of answers once we take over.
Speaking about balanced budget, do you think in our lifetime, we will see anything balanced coming out from
Yeah,
there?
I do. I think so. I'm part of the Republican Study Committee, which is a very conservative group, and we have been looking at different ways to balance the budget. I mean, that was one of the founding principles of the Contract with America of the 1990s was we will have a balanced budget amendment. I think the plan that the RSC, Republican Study Committee, has put together is a 7-year plan to balance the budget. Because, again, there are certain things you can and cannot do, because we have mandatory spending and we have discretionary spending. And what we saw is that even if you zeroed out all discretionary spending, the mandatory spending that we have put in place continues to grow. And that's nothing that we can cut. We can't cut mandatory spending unless we put together a task force, work through legislation, and we're able to cut back. It's the discretionary spending that we can cut. So my answer to you is yes, because I think if Republicans don't put forth a balanced budget, they won't be in power very long, because our constituency wants that.
Yep.
Yeah. Speaking of budgeting a bit, I worked for a defense contractor a bit before moving here, and they said that the reason we keep getting more and more negatives, and the reason mandatory spending is growing and growing, is because they're given, let's say, $10 million to spend annually, and they find a way to spend it all. Because if they don't, they'll get how much ever they spent, So if they actually needed $8 million and they spent $8
So
million,
if they don't spend the 10,
Yes,
they just
exactly.
spent the 8, then the next year they only get the 8.
Exactly.
And costs may go up and that they need 9, but they can't get it because
Exactly.
So it's
Exactly.
easier just to spend the full amount. Yeah.
Exactly.
That happens, I think, not just in defense, but that happens everywhere with contractors. And again, that's something that should be fixed, right? I mean, in the business world, again, if you're able to save the taxpayers' money, you should be rewarded for that, not punished.
Yeah.
And so I think I talked to some drug companies, kind of a smaller, not the big drug companies, but ones in the middle. And they have a cancer drug. They were able to develop it cheaper, this, that, and the other. Anyway, it's a drug that was significantly cheaper than the drug. It was for small cell tumors to shrink them. It was significantly cheaper than what the big pharma had put out, so they felt like they could discount it. But if they only discounted it by the discounted price would only be $2,000 less. It's a $19,000 drug a month, okay, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
They could discount it to 6, 7.
Oh, wow.
But the problem is if they did that, then big pharma would flood the market. They'd be put out of business, and so I think that's going to be what you're going to see in the commitment to America, which is what Kevin is putting together, the Republicans are putting together. We've got to really look at things just like what you described in terms of you only spend 8, but if you could do it for 8, but you got to spend the 10.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing both in pharmaceutical costs because that's and so what Leader McCarthy has said, and this is what I told the drug company. What Leader McCarthy has said, the two biggest threats to the United States right now, China and our debt.
Yep.
And in that order. And so things like what you're talking about, things like what I'm talking about, the drug company, I said, always frame it when you're talking to Leader McCarthy as this could help take down the debt. Because it could. So I'm hopeful that, again, this commitment to America, which is very much going to be like the contract with America, we're going to cover a lot of different things. We're going to cover the border. We're going to cover healthcare. We're going to cover the economy. We're going to taxing energy, because that's a huge thing right now. You all know that. Anybody that fills up their gas knows that we've got a real problem.
It hits.
And it's worldwide.
Speaking of inflation, what do you think the best way to combat that? I think it's like 2/3 of all the money has been printed in the last 2-3 years, something like that. So obviously, our dollar is devalued by official numbers are 9.7%, but could be a lot more. What do you think best way to combat that? Or do you think, first of all, is it going to get worse before it gets better? And what will you do to fix it?
Great question. The first thing that I would do, if anybody's listening, vote Republican. That will help fix it. But I do think there's certain things that we have to do, and I think one is anytime you can't spend your way into prosperity.
Exactly.
So we've got to cut back. That's why I think focusing on a time period of where we get to a balanced budget, I think will help. I think what we have to do to stop the inflation that we're seeing in this country, unleash all of the natural resources that we have in this country, and we have a lot of them. We've got to stop punishing businesses from doing well. Yeah. And we have to stop rewarding people for not doing anything. And that all goes to, this is why we have inflation. And we've got to stop doing these spending packages that mean nothing to the American public. But and that's why, again, I go back to the CHIPS Act, because I just think about us here in Central Ohio. This was a bipartisan, easy bill that brings chip manufacturing back to this country, and we need it. But politicians and Republicans too, but for I mean, we're not in control. But the Democrats, what they do is they want to spend on all these different things. They want to force you to drive an electric vehicle. Well, it may be fine to drive an electric vehicle, but the sad thing is, where is most of that power coming from?
Exactly.
It's not coming from a windmill or a solar panel. Worldwide, that accounted for 1.8% of all the electricity that's generated. Where'd the lion's share come from? Coal, natural gas, oil, and nukes. That's it. So stop punishing people for their lifestyle, number one. Number two, cut the spending, for sure. And number three, let's unleash America's natural resources so we can help grow the economy and not shrink it. And that's what this administration is doing.
Energy independent again.
We were energy independent 2 years,
2 years ago. Yep.
And now the other problem you have this woke mentality, okay, that has gotten involved with our financial institutions. So now if you want to go and build a fossil fuel plant or build an oil refinery, you can't get anybody to finance you. And that's some of the stuff. I signed on to a bill with Andy Barr out of Kentucky that says, hey, financial institutions, stick with what you're doing. Don't put your personal agenda into the money markets. It's not what you're there for. So hopefully something once we take control we'll be able to get to.
Maybe to shift gears a little bit, something that is near and dear to my heart. I have 6 kids, personally, and we were talking about maybe option to adopt and stuff like that. After Roe versus Wade was overturned, are there any talks on the Capitol Hill or anywhere in the committees or anything? Can something be done because pregnancies are going to happen anyway?
Yeah.
People are not kind of controlling themselves with that over sexualization of the society. Kids and girls will get pregnant and all of that. Anything that can be done to make like adoption process like easier, or any other steps to help them. I mean, besides churches just stepping in through like volunteering and helping and all that stuff, something realistic. Because I mean, if the child is born, it's illegal to kill the child in the womb.
Right.
It's born now. Somebody's got to take care of that, and to go through adoption process is like at least $20,000. I mean, it's ridiculous. Do you think are there any talks? Is there anything you can kind of share with the Christian community? Something maybe to look toward or work in certain direction, where people in the churches could step in and help. And
well, I mean, I think the one thing what we've seen with the Roe v. Wade decision is all that does is really force it to
to states.
The states. So, but I think that what we've got to do a better job of is, because I know people that have personally gone through this, and they've spent thousands of dollars and waited many years. And when we have a need, I mean, I have friends of mine. I have 3 kids, and they range from ages of 20 now to 7 months. Okay, so I have a lot of friends that are actually my age in their 50s that never had children, and they're trying very hard to have children, and they're having troubles having children. Where adoption, if it could be an option for them, would be. Yep. So, but it's the time, it's the money that takes place. I'm not sure that there's anything that is currently in Congress that would help, to my knowledge, but I do think it's something that should be addressed, and I do think you'll find that, again, once we take over, I think you'll find there are a lot of people that want to be able to help when children are born and get them into good homes. And I think that's something that's very important. I think you'll see a commitment, because all of us that are pro-life, like I am, we've got to also be responsible enough to say that, if a child is born, we need to take care of that child. We need to find a home for that child and stop the bureaucratic runaround that you get when you're trying to adopt, because it's not right.
And America so far is the best country in the world to live in, and
Absolutely.
Where else you can provide the best care for the kids.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad that you answered that, because I have some friends that are liberals, and their argument on abortion is, you guys care about the baby being born, but then you guys don't care about them after they're born. So
and it is such a. I think that is such a. We had the abortion bill on the floor yesterday, which which was part of the reason I was late coming in from Washington while we were having a shower for my sister-in-law who's getting married. So I wasn't able to help my wife with the planning on it. So I had to sit there and listen to all these arguments on, from the left. And there was one that really struck me. One of the people stood up and said, "Thank God abortion is still legal," on the Democratic side. And I thought to myself, how can you thank God that abortion is still legal?
The murder is still legal.
The murder, it was, but that just shows you how obtuse the other side is to the reality of what life actually is. And so, there were several bills yesterday. I think there were a total of 5. My hope again is that, what they were trying to do, guys, was they were trying to make Roe v. Wade federal law.
Yeah.
Codified into law, yeah.
into federal law. And we can't do that. But to your point, we gotta step up and do a better job and make sure that we take care of these folks. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I was born in March 13th, 1971. Okay, my parents were married August 14th. Now you do the math.
Girls do the math way better than
So,
we are.
yeah.
So.
I mean,
Yeah.
I was not one that was planned.
Yep.
Okay, and I just think about, obviously I was born in 1971. Roe v. Wade had not occurred, but who knows?
Yeah. I think one of our final questions, because you have a busy schedule, with these past 2 years and us seeing how involved government has been with COVID and with lockdowns and now with inflations and stuff, what do you think is the biggest threat to our freedoms, and what do you think is the biggest thing standing in the way of letting everyday people just live their lives?
Yeah. Okay. We didn't plan that. It just kind of came out at the same time. I have watched so many of my dear friends, and Vadim, I mean, you probably saw it as well. I mean, so many folks that we knew that own restaurants, right? And I worked for an industry, coal mining, and I was able to make coal mining deemed essential because we needed to have electricity to keep our power plants running, right? Or keep the homes warm, toasty lights on. So we were able to deem those coal miners as essential employees. Yet several of the restaurants around my house, I live in German Village, they weren't essential. So why were those coal miners essential, but that small business owner was not? And I had a real problem with that. I really did. I understand safety, and as Vadim said, we're hockey dads, and you have a bunch of dirty boys running around, so you keep that. You're washing your hands all the time and everything. But I think what's the biggest threat is that the lockdowns created hysteria, and we saw it with toilet paper. Why was there a run on toilet paper? I mean, were the toilet paper manufacturers not producing enough? No. So I think we got to be really careful with these lockdowns. I really do. And why is it that during COVID, when I don't know whether your churches were closed, when people couldn't go to church, but yet they could amass on the squares and protest, break windows, and do everything else? I mean, what was different than that instead of going to, I'm Catholic, so going to mass? Absolutely nothing. So I think we got to do a better job. I think this was a run that hopefully you have now elected leaders that are saying, hey, we got to really think about this. We can't force these businesses to close, because everything that happened with COVID, all the spending that happened, all the people that decided that they just didn't want to work anymore. Think about when COVID restrictions were lifted, so many people are like, I'm fine. I'm getting this check. I'm staying home.
And still are.
I mean, we just stopped at a restaurant in up in London, Ohio, and he's got a sign on the board. He's from Albania. He's an immigrant, came over in the 1980s under Ronald Reagan. Really great guy, and he's telling me, trying to find people to work in his place. Still can't find the people. So again, the mandates that were put in place, I thought were draconian. I understand the safety. But I think what we've seen, and if you look at what happened in Florida, as opposed to what happened in Ohio, what happened in New York, what happened in California, And Texas. I mean, look at Florida and Texas. They continued to operate. They opened up sooner. They got rid of the fear. So I think that is a big threat. And I think hopefully we elect people that have minds like DeSantis that says, hey, enough's enough. We got to open up. Our businesses can't afford it.
Do you have anything planned to hold those people accountable that were responsible for mandates and lockdowns? And the second follow-up question is there anything that can be done to prevent something like that from happening ever again?
Well, I go back to what I think we'll be able to do once we are able to have oversight hearings on all the committees as Republicans. Because, I mean, right now, I don't want to say we're powerless, but we don't control the agenda for the committees. I think there's definitely going to be some oversight as to who knew what and when, as it relates to coming out of China. Yeah. I mean, that's going to be
and also who was making what off of what?
Absolutely. And those are going to be the things. I think a lot of the Republicans. And listen, I just got there in November, so this has been in the works for quite some time. But I think I think these hearings that we're going to have as Republicans, because every Republican, and the leader just told us this just yesterday, us freshmen. I'm more of a red-shirted freshman since I'm not a full-fledged freshman, but every one of the committees will have oversight hearings. And I can assure you, the virus, the shutdowns, where the money went, who got the money, who was responsible, all of that will be addressed in our oversight hearings, whether it's on Ways and Means, whether it's E&C, whatever the committee, Agriculture Committee, Natural Resource Committee, whatever committee it is, there will be oversight hearings, and I can assure you those are the questions that our constituents are asking us. We need to be asking the political leaders that were in charge when that happened.
Mm-hmm. Any final questions, Alex?
Maybe quick question, just my personal. I got my own point of view, but I just want to hear your take on that. Mr. Trump, our former president, his popularity, is it because of the name Trump and his like style and his like off the chart politics methods, or is this just simply because he was campaigning and doing what basic regular people pretty much looking for?
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. I think, obviously I was a supporter of the president's, very big supporter of the president's, and he's endorsed me in my last campaign. But I think what the president did was he showed that you don't have to be a career politician to get things done. And I think a lot of people were concerned with some of the rhetoric, the mean tweets, but you always see the kind of the memes.
Yeah.
You know, $5 gas, no mean tweets. I'd really like to have a mean tweet back down to $1.70 a gallon. But I think what President Trump did was he put forth the America First agenda, and he stayed committed to that. And it wasn't a Republican agenda. It wasn't a Democrat agenda. It was an American First agenda. And he wanted to work with all sides to get that done. But the problem is, as career politicians, they don't like anybody infringing on it. I mean, you look at, there are more union, and I'm not talking about the government employees union. I'm not talking about the teachers union. But when you look at the carpenters, the cops, the firemen, the people that really work for a living, they overwhelmingly supported President Trump because he supported them, and steel workers, iron pipe fitters, whoever, and I think that resonated. And I don't know if he runs again. I know he said he's going to make some announcement, I believe, in September. Is that what we read?
He was throwing some hints, like in Alaska and stuff.
I mean, I just watched. I think you all probably have watched it on TV. I try not to watch it because it's embarrassing, but you're watching as President Biden goes over to Saudi Arabia, hat in hand, begging them to increase oil production. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. And again, we were energy independent before he took office. Stopped pipelines, stopped permits, stopped letting us explore our natural resources. But I think Trump's what people saw in Trump was they saw themselves.
Yep.
They saw somebody who wasn't perfect. There were a lot of things about Trump they didn't like, but he was a business guy. And he knew how to make deals, and he knew how to get things done. And in the end, guess what? His Remain in Mexico policy worked. If you look at the border right now, I mean, I just got back from the border about 4 weeks ago. And it was something that I mean, I've always heard about the border and I've always heard how bad it is. I had no idea. I mean, they have over 1,500 people coming across. This is just one of the facilities. I mean, I don't know how many there are, but I mean, they're all across the border. One facility, 1,500 people a day. I want you to put this in perspective. 1,500 people a day. Each one of those people, $8,000 to get over. 8 to 12, whatever it is. Cartels are making $1 billion a month off of human trafficking. The Remain in Mexico policy that Trump championed was working. Building the wall was working. And I saw places along the wall, and these poor border agents, I feel bad for them because they want to do a job. They want to make sure that the border is secure, but yet what they have to do is they have to go and become processing people.
Yeah.
And that's all they do.
Just clerks in the
Clerks.
office. Yeah.
And it's terrible. And then to think that this is just a northern hemisphere problem, it's not. I mean, of all the people that came through McAllen, Texas, 174 countries came across that border town.
Pretty much from every nation under the sun.
We don't have 170 countries in the North America or in South America. I mean, so they're coming from everywhere. So again, I think his appeal, he said, this is what I'm going to do. People believed him, and they supported him. And I think that's, I think if he does run again, I think that'll be his appeal again. But I think now that we've seen the track record of this administration, people are going to be like, boy, things were good back then.
Yeah. I think if he does run, it'll be a lot different than it was the first time as well, because the first time he got to the top without having built up the infrastructure under
absolutely.
him. And now this time, you and other people that are America First, that are, for the people, by the people, are filling in, the lower positions
absolutely
and building the foundation for, the main person in charge if Trump is to run and win. He'll have that
absolutely
everything built up that can,
I don't disagree with you because I will tell you what we just saw, and this just happened. I mean, up until about 2 weeks ago, I was the most junior member in the Republican Party in Congress. Okay, and we picked up 3 seats, so I'm now the 4th most junior member of the Republican Party. But we picked up a seat in South Texas, in McAllen, 75% Hispanic.
Yep.
Biden won the seat, I think, by 13 points, maybe even more. Mayra Flores won it by 5-6%, something like that. But I mean, this is a district that has not been Republican in 100 years.
Yeah,
I mean, things are changing. And so I think we've got a really good opportunity to hopefully change America. And to your point, a lot of these candidates were America First candidates, and I think you're going to see that continue to grow.
Yeah, I think as far left as the pendulum has swung, it's now starting to come back.
Absolutely.
Right, and starting to come back hard and fast.
Absolutely.
So, well, thank you, sir, for your time.
Wonderful.
It was
Pleasure,
great.
guys. Great.
Yeah,
Just
Love to come back anytime.
Quick thing.
Yeah.
As a church, as a Christian community, we have obligation to pray for the authorities and rulers, in our country, which we are trying to do pretty much every single church meeting. We have a couple of them through the week, Sunday 2 times, and through the week and stuff. And we sincerely care about this country, sincerely care about success and well-being of the citizens, and we are praying. So as long as we are sticking to Judeo-Christian values, Bible, the God of the Bible, I still have hope and faith that we can swing up, climb up, fight up, and have a decent life. But we got to acknowledge God and keep using the opportunities that we have. So thank you, appreciate for coming. Just remember, we are praying for you.
Well, and I appreciate it. And I would ask that you pray for not just me, but my colleagues, both the Democrats and the Republicans, because I'll tell you, it's there are so many issues that are facing this country, and there's so many issues that we face. I mean, when it comes to energy, I understand them, okay? But there are so many issues that we are asked to vote on, and just pray for all of us, because I mean it is a massive task.
We understand, and there is so many things that are pushed in that are dividing country, and this is something that we don't want to see.
Yeah.
And we are praying for both sides. It's not just like Republican prayer or anything.
Absolutely.
We are praying for all branches of governments, all levels of government. So we continue to do that. So we do our side. Hopefully,
You'll do
you will
yours.
do your side.
Well, thank you so much.
Sure.
Everybody. We appreciate everybody listening in. If you would like to contact us, there's multiple ways to do that. You can find us on social media, Facebook and Twitter. We're at Rep Mike Carey. We also have at Carey for Congress if you'd like to follow us on the campaign side as well. But on the official side, you can go to our website. It's carey.house.gov. We do a lot of things for the community in terms of casework and working with people. We want to make sure that if you have issues with the federal agency, you can contact our office and we'll be able to help you out. So,
Blaine, that's a
well,
good
again,
point. Why don't you tell them how many cases that we have actually worked to help resolve since we've just been in office?
Sure. So right now we've closed over 500 cases so far. We've given back or saved people over $1 million already in the 15th congressional district. So it's something we're very proud of. Whether it's a veterans case, Social Security, passport issues.
Those are big.
If your family's coming to Washington D.C. and you want to tour, reach out to our office. We're happy to help.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Blaine.
You can take away everything that I ever worked for. I'ma keep on pushing till I earn